Thank you so much for watching The Real Source with me, Tafadzwa. In this video, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on Collision, a film currently streaming on Netflix. It is set in Joburg, South Africa, and is directed by Fabien Martorell, a French director. And the cast is made up of a good mix of South Africa's screen talent, the old and the new, including Vuyo Dabula as gangster Brasol, Langley Kirkwood as the disillusioned Johan Gresser, Tessa Jabber as Diane Gresser, Bonko Koza as Larry, Mpo Sebeng as Tando, Zoe Sneden as Nikki Gresser, Spesihle Vazi as Cecil, and Samke Makoba as Palisa. So what's the movie about? I think this is at the very heart of what my review is about. If we were to go by Netflix's own blurb, one fateful day, a corrupt businessman and his socialite wife race to save their daughter from a notorious crime lord. But as you watch the film, though, you quickly realize that for better or worse, it's not that simple. It's not a clean-cut race against the clock type of thriller. And let me pause there and ask you to remember that phrase, for better or worse, because I'm going to use it as the spine of this review. Let's start with for better, the good. The one thing I appreciated about this movie is that it attempts to tackle some big issues. While it is ultimately a thriller of sorts, it also does so in the context of recognizing the complex dynamics of post-apartheid South Africa, a country that has in many ways shattered the aspirations of its citizens, both black and white. And if you add to that mix the immigration question, then you have quite a volatile scenario. So it is against this backdrop that we meet the aforementioned characters, each dealing with how to survive in South Africa. And it's really about their stories intersecting with disastrous and somewhat tragic results. And so this is where I cross over to the other part of the review, the things that troubled me a little bit with the movie. Collision's attempt to communicate the big ideas of justice and social cohesion happen, unfortunately, by way of a story that doesn't quite feel polished and characters that, for the most part, are pretty hard to empathize with. There are a lot of cliches and generalizations just thrown at us, and there are times where the characters will just shout out lines that don't feel authentic to the story, but sound more about preaching or protest. Even the manner in which some of the key characters intersect, for example, Johan and Brasol, doesn't quite feel plausible. It's hard to put a finger on it, but I'll put my neck on the block here and say that some of these problem areas were centered around the script. Not necessarily the acting or even the directing, but the script itself. It felt like it took a while to get things going. Now, an argument could be made that it's a slow burn, one of those movies where things start slow and then they build up to a climax. But somehow many of the initial moments before the big climax, because there is a big climax in this movie, well, those moments didn't feel that engaging. And I feel the people who lost out more here are the actors. And so ultimately, I do feel this movie is a victim of its own hype, and that's unfortunate because in terms of feel, style, and genre, it reminded me somewhat of Crash, that Hollywood award-winning movie about characters whose lives intersect. But sadly, this version didn't quite hit home. It didn't quite land. I do want to shout out Ofense Mwase for his cinematography in this movie. I feel he's been doing his thing for the longest time, and his work on this movie, his first feature, is definitely worth celebrating. So these are my thoughts on Collision, a South African production streaming on Netflix. Let me know your thoughts on the film if you've watched it, and if you feel I was a little too harsh, well, please let me know. But if you think I had some valid points here, I would also love to hear from you. Ultimately, what we want to do is keep shining a light on African content. From me here on The Real Source, this is Tafadzwa saying thank you so much for watching, and do take care.